want to talk about the South China Sea and Chinese, I'd say, assertions there. The Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has compared China's buildup of artificial islands there as, quote, akin to Russia's taking of Crimea. If the Trump administration ends up following that line of thinking, how does it change the status quo in the South China Sea?
Well, what's going on in the South China Sea is also very alarming because, in essence, what China has done, they've ascribed the entire area, which hangs down all the way, hundreds and hundreds of miles to Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, as theirs.
They've made a historical claim.
A historical claim, which
territory,
by any international legal standards is quite ludicrous.
Right. And just to be clear, the U.S. position here is not one or the other on the territorial claims, right? I mean, their interest is in securing international waters. Is that the right way to?
Freedom of navigation is basically, because there's a tremendous amount of shipping that goes through there. For instance, neither Japan nor Korea have energy, oil, gas. So everything has to come through there. So it's a very critical waterway. So that's the U.S.'s sort of primary conception of its charge. And the Chinese are saying, well, we won't interfere with international travel, with global trade. We just want to own it.
Right.
And they're building these islands, military bases on these coral atolls. And the question is, what should the U.S. do about it, if anything?
And what is your recommendation?
Well, there's a limited amount we can do because our force is sort of projected all the way across the Western Pacific, whereas China's increasingly powerful maritime and naval and air force is right there. But I mean, I do think that our alliance structure is critically important here, but then the Philippines just waltzed off with Beijing, Duterte and Xi. So it's a very complicated situation that raises the most profound and vexing questions about how the U.S. should deport itself out there. And here we have the Trump administration, which doesn't seem to have any particular stars to steer by. And it makes it very, very, I think, unsettling.
So do you think it makes these complex issues more volatile to have the Secretary of State saying this is akin to the land seizure in Crimea?
Well, I mean, I do think the one virtue of Tillerson's statement and many Trump statements is that it puts China on notice that the U.S. there's a new sheriff in town, and the U.S. does not shine kindly on China's actions. Now, the question is, what are they going to do about it? And can they negotiate their way out of it with China? Now, if Trump is the big deal maker, one might hope that he'd be able to make a big deal. Possibly he can. I mean, that is an actual, I think, hope that we should not dismiss.
That's interesting that you say that they're sort of, we've talked a lot about Trump's transactional approach to international relations here at the Carnegie Council. So you actually see some virtue in that approach.
I think in many ways Donald Trump's like Mao Zedong. I mean, he's a kind of a roguish character that wants to turn everything upside down. And in a certain way, I think the U.S.-China relationship could stand a little of that. On the other hand, one has to be extremely careful about just throwing the whole thing out and ending up, with conflict. So, but to put China on notice that the terms of the game should be readjusted is not foolish, because the playing field is not level. And China has really pushed things, I think, to the edge of endurance for many countries, and not just the United States. It has really become a bully. And I think it's the classic case where a country that has been bullied finds it very tempting when it gets powerful to put the shoe on the other foot. But that's very, very dangerous, particularly when you have someone as thin-skinned as Donald Trump in power, who knows a little bit about bullying himself.